Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more early access Path of Exile 2 coverage. Today it's time for us to talk about the 6 announced classes for the early access, and then their subclasses, the Ascendancies. That's right, while there's ultimately going to be 12 classes planned for the full release of the game, also meant to have 3 Ascendancies each, we are starting with half of those classes and only 2 Ascends per class. I think that's pretty fair. They want to test the game in this big, open way, and obviously they've got a lot to test, so they're going to limit it for now in some ways. The lineup of the classes, if you aren't aware though, are these. We have Warrior, Mercenary, Sorceress, Witch, Monk, and Ranger. So that's 1 pure Strength, 1 pure Dex, 2 pure Intelligence, and then you got the 2 hybrids. So it's an interesting mix of options, but what about those Ascendancies? That's what this video is all about really. What are the Ascendancies? How do they work? How do you unlock them? All the important details to know. Let's start with the simple explanation. Ascendancy classes are subclasses for your specific character. So let's say you pick a main class, say a warrior. Maybe you choose to be a really different strange warrior, one that uses magic or something unexpected. That's possible because any class can choose to use any ability that they want. But it's only a warrior that can choose to ascend to warrior subclasses, which in the case for this early access will be your choice of Titan or Warbringer. To unlock them, you'll progress through the campaign, eventually completing a trial of Ascension to get you started, which I'll explain shortly. For now though, let's start with the warrior to give you a good idea of what these Ascendancies really do. But we'll go down the list now. For warrior then, we have our pure strength based class for the early access. Big, heavy weapons that deal big damage with stunning power behind them. Stereotypically, this is performed with a mace. But we are seeing a lot of footage with shield skills. That alongside your heavy armor is going to make you a very tanky option, and I think a very beginner friendly class because it's going to let you kind of get away with a lot of things. The interesting concept behind the shield though is the way that you can actively block, and that prevents incoming damage from one direction. So there's actually a lot of skill in the use of that. Though be aware that they did include some unblockable attacks where the enemy has a red attack, so you can't block those, as a sort of balancing thing around that concept. In any case, the warrior Ascendancies are going to be Warbringer and Titan like I said. Titan is leaning into the slam concept and specifically using big two-handed weapons. These slams will also begin to leave aftershocks, so extra damage in the area you slam, as well as strong ability to stun enemies, such as what we're seeing in boss fights, stunning enemies, letting you deal big damage while they're vulnerable. The other option we have, of course, is Warbringer, taking totems and transforming them into spirits. That allows them to get around and actually attack more directly. Totems you normally just plonk down and they provide a different effect to enhance you or help you fight. One other detail about the Warbringer is his ability to, well, warcry a lot. So if you want to go more into utility style playstyle, Warbringer is definitely the one to go for. Where Titan will be a lot more beginner friendly, I imagine. Next up, let's talk about the Mercenary, which is a hybrid class of strength and dexterity, using a mix of crossbows that are essentially just all different kinds of gun, whether it's a shotgun, like a rifle, or a sniper rifle, alongside specific types of ammo and even grenades to further modify how you're fighting and what you're using and when. To give you the classic example that they gave us, you could freeze an enemy and then swap to armor-piercing rounds that will be really effective at shattering that frozen enemy. A great one to set up a situation and then punish in a really effective way. They also really highlighted this class, in particular with the new movement mechanic, WASD to move, and then aim with your mouse. So it looks like a really unique class that I think is going to be very popular. And it's 2 Ascendancy options, a Witch Hunter and then Gemling Legionnaire. A Witch Hunter Mercenary then is actually leaning more into arcane use, allowing you to generate this kind of ward. It's interesting because it protects you from the elements, but it's actually making you more vulnerable to physical. Though because we're more of a ranged class, you can avoid being up in the face of enemies. With good kiting, you should be able to kind of deal with that. But they're very specialized at dealing with magic users, of course, interrupting spells, slowing down their ability to actually channel them out. It's not just magic users though. With one passive, you can actually make enemies explode, dealing physical damage around them. And that's even more effective against undead and demons. They also have one of the most interesting passives that I've seen, at least in these showcases. Judge, Jury, and Executioner is Decimating Strike, which unironically deals 30% of a boss's health on the first hit. That's because it's an initial hit on an enemy and it does 30% of its health. So yeah, if you use that against a boss with a big health bar, it's just straight up 30% gone in the opening of a fight. So yeah, Witch Hunter, but kind of Demon and Undead Hunter as well. On the other hand then, we have the Gemling Legionnaire, which is really cool in concept because you know how we're taking those skill gems and putting them into our gear to activate powerful stuff. This guy is basically ramming them into his own flesh, unlocking more skill potential. So this will literally give you more skill slots than other classes will have access to, or increase your passive resistances per gem socketed anywhere in yourself. And very coolly, you could use a gem of any color without worrying about what your attribute setup is. And the quality of your gems is just going to be better with this subclass. So it's a very unique and cool concept, and I would consider this more of a purist style of your mercenary. Next up, let's talk about the Sorceress, which is our first pure intelligence class here, one of the two that are going to be in the early access. Sorceress is essentially parts of the Witch from PoE 1. It's a pure caster, leading into being all about dealing the elemental damage of your preferred option directly yourself, where what we see of the Witch these days in Path of Exile 2 is it's more of a summoner. So expect to use lots of elements and combo them together. Through what we've been shown though, we've been shown a lot of fire, freezing, and lightning in particular for this one. The Sorcerer is going to have the two Ascendancies of Stormweaver and Chronomancer to begin with though. Chronomancy then is of course to do with time, and is a very cool and interesting concept. You can literally freeze time, at least temporarily. It basically means the enemies can't act for that period. You can also go back and rewind time. So instead of say teleporting forward, you go back to where you were, also returning life and mana that you had in that moment, which could lead to some very gambly gameplay, but a very cool concept indeed. On the other hand, we have Stormweaver, which seems a lot less complex, leaning heavily into the element of lightning, enhancing your damage through lots of crits, or building up lots of stacks of shock. Between the two, Stormweaver definitely looks a lot more approachable, but Chronomancer seems very cool indeed. So next up, let's talk about the other pure intelligence option for the early access, which is Witch, an original PoE 1 class but has changed in noticeable ways. Pretty much now, like I said, the summoner class, using occult spells and an army of undead that you're going to be using. Yes, essentially necromancy. There's a new resource in the game called Spirit, and in particular for the Witch, that's going to define how many minions you can actually have. But it's basically a tactician style of gameplay, managing all your different minions, controlling what they're doing directly, whether that's what kind of skills they're going to use, who they're going to attack, enhancing their damage, debuffing the enemies through curses, that kind of thing. There's a lot of quality of life with this version of a summoner though, so it should hit that necromancer fantasy very well. But for the Ascendancies, we of course have two more. We have Infernalist and Blood Mage. For the Infernalist, you're going to have one specific summon called the Hellhound. What's really helpful about that is as you take damage, it kind of takes a chunk of that for you. Through this though, you become a much more fire-focused playstyle, whether that's the Hellhound itself or you generating lots of fire. It also gives you the option to enter a demon form, causing you to take much more damage over time, but your cast speed and damage goes up as well as you stay in it. So it's very risky to stay in it for a long time, but the rewards are massive. Meanwhile, we also have the Blood Mage. This one's interesting because you spend health to cast your skills on top of normal mana cost. But you're going to have a lot of lifesteal to work in through Leech, and in general, lots of healing gained by killing enemies. You'll also be rewarded for having more life in general. So high health, but you're spending it a lot and healing it a lot. Both pretty cool concepts. Alright, that brings us to Monk, another hybrid class for the game and a new one in Path of Exile 2. This is actually very element based, but themed around using a quarterstaff as your weapon. So there's lightning and in particular a lot of ice control. But from the Monk, you're going to be generating stacks by instantly killing low health enemies. Those stacks transfer into a power charge, which is said to empower different skills in different ways. And with the class being very mobile, I like the idea of pinging around, killing things instantly, all the weak enemies, and then using a powerful special attack on a big guy. Its two Ascendancies though are Invoker and Acolyte of Chayula. For Invoker, you're going to essentially focus on one thing, whether that's cold or lightning. And the thing you pick gives you more bonuses for that element. You lean hard into that one focused element then, and in exchange you get much bigger energy shields. The Invoker can also take on a kind of avatar form after you built up enough fury to actually bring it out. For the other one then, Acolyte of Chayula, that's the whole shadow concept for a monk. Instead of spirit then, you have darkness. So darkness is used to deal damage, but also protect yourself. Like we say, the Shroud of Darkness, which completely mitigates damage while it's active. But if you instead save that darkness, you can convert it into chaos damage on top of your normal hits. They're also super resistant to chaos, and through Mana Leech, they generate their own energy shield. That brings us to the last class and its Ascendancies though. This is the Ranger, of course, a classic and a very popular one in Path of Exile 1. Your classic archer, using a bow and fighting at medium to long range, with incredible speed, mobility, and of course, AoE power. Your elements will be lightning and ice, but you can also weave in lots of poison as another option. For the Ascendancies here then, we have Deadeye and Pathfinder. So Pathfinder is the one that leans into poison, but that's partly through the concoctions that you use. Basically, you're generating elixirs and flasks that you use against the enemy or for yourself. So using your flash charges, you can instead attack. And those concoction attacks are very versatile in what they can do. Like, they can cause enemies to bleed. You can generate shock through throwing this kind of lightning vial. Or, like I said with poison, spreading a kind of contagious version of poison that spreads through into other enemies in a tight pack. And a really cool feature of the Pathfinder is the ability to move without being slowed at all, as well as not having a movement penalty while using skills at the same time. So you should be able to flow around the fight while leaning heavily into a type of concoction that you want to use in that situation, whatever's going to be best. On the other hand, you have the classic Deadeye. You're basically leaning into the marksman style of being a ranger here. You're going to fire off potent arrows, or just significantly more arrows at that. You'll manage this using the tailwind mechanic. So tailwind means that you're going to be moving a lot faster, but the issue with it is that you lose all tailwind when you take a hit. So you're rewarded by moving around and flowing around a fight, controlling the situation at medium to long range, never getting hit, but punished if you mess that up. As we're about to mention for, say, one of the trials, this is going to be really great because you're able to increase your speed if you don't get hit, but you lose that speed when you do take damage. But yeah, very classic ranger. If you're looking for more of that purist concept, I would definitely go Deadeye. So those are the Ascendancies of the first phase of early access. Hopefully that does give you a good idea of them, but let's now talk about how you actually unlock them. In short, we'll complete Ascension trials while progressing the campaign. They're like these special dungeons which first unlock the Ascend option, but then as you do future trials, they now give you more points to work with to then spend in that Ascendancy, whatever the one that you picked. They will get harder as you go, but that's much like the rest of the game, but will certainly be a high priority the moment that they're an option. In PoE 2 though, we do have options in general. In this early access, we'll be able to choose between two different trial types, with a third trial to be added in the future. First up, they told us about the trial of Secamus. In this trial, you gain honor, a resource to build up. You lose honor whenever you take a hit though, and if you lose it all, you have to restart the entire trial. So you build it by searching through the dungeon, killing monsters, finding items, completing challenges, and generally avoiding hit by kiting and moving cleverly. A pretty simple concept, and probably an approachable option for more speedy or AoE clear builds and setups. On the other hand, our other option will be the trial of Chaos. There's no honor resource system there, so you're not going to be punished by taking hits. As per the name then, it's a lot more random. You have to choose negatives as you go, and so that could say be stronger enemies, more debuffs for yourself, different traps in the environment to deal with, and other things. So I would say that the Trial of Chaos is more designed for slower builds that are going to be happy to take those hits. You just have to choose the negatives that you can handle until you reach the end, without then worrying about kiting monsters to avoid being hit the whole time. Now, I did say there's also going to be a third trial at some point, but what that is, we don't know. I just like the fact that they're making a variety of different options for different trial types, ones that suit different builds and playstyles and approaches. I think that's really clever, instead of expecting everyone to do the same thing, and some builds are going to be better at that than others. But yeah, in recap then, we have 6 classes in this early access. Each has a choice of 2 Ascendancies, and then that becomes your kind of real class. Maybe you'll start as a ranger, but then ascend to Deadeye. We do so by completing the first trial during the campaign, and then we'll gain points to spend in the new subclass tree later after completing more trials in the future. With that, they've also given us options for what kind of trials we want to do in an effort to benefit the specific playstyles better. It's not too complex when you look at it like that, so I hope this helped you. So, what class are you going to start with? Personally, I'm very tempted by the Mercenary myself. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.